Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and today we're looking into everything cooking. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a strange video because an archetype is very closely tied into this. So, I'm going to do this first part of the video like I'm doing one of my archetype videos. Then, I'm going to do everything else, but I'll be like pretty much doing an ending cut, more or less, and then we'll move forward. So if you're watching the archetype video that comes from this is the wandering chef archetype. It's very, very interesting. And yeah, so we got a lot of stuff. And if you are watching just the archetype video that is coming from this video, then please go ahead and check out the little bubble up top here to get the full cooking video so you can see everything else that came out. But if you're just interested in the Wandering Chef, then this is going to be the video for you. Now, I do have to state before the video gets started that Paizo did send me a copy of the Tian Xia character guide for the sake of review, but this is not sponsored content. They're not paying me to do this. They just gave me the book to review. So, all thoughts and opinions here are my own. All right. So, let's go ahead and get on with the archetype. So, Wandering Chef. Now, for people who are unaware, cooking in China and in like Central Asia, actually like most of the world, obviously, but especially in Central Asia, which is where this book is mostly sourced from, is a really big deal, especially when it comes to medicinal styles of food. So there's lots of like these stories of foods that could, revitalize you, bring you fertility, all this other kind of stuff. And it's a very big aspect of like Central Asian cultures for the most part. So it's very reasonable, in fact, that we're going to get a archetype like this. And in all honesty, I'm so stoked to see more cooking put into Pathfinder. It's so unreasonable that player characters just go around eating nothing but rations or like whatever you can catch on the trail, berries or whatever, and like have any decent like living situation. You would be depressed living that way for an extended period of time. Having a cook in your party should be like one of the most hype things ever, and the Wandering Chef actually does not disappoint. So let's look at the dedication. The dedication itself gives you crafting if you are trained in crafting, if you aren't already trained in crafting, otherwise you get something else. Also, when you are crafting alchemical food, you can use cookware rather than alchemical, like a science or alchemist's tool belt or whatever it's called. Alchemist toolkit, that's what it is. It's right here in the text in front of me. So that's really nice as well if you want to make only alchemical food. I don't know how often that's really going to come up, honestly. I feel like people are just going to take the Alchemist Toolkit anyway so they can make other alchemical items. But hey, if this is your only form of bonus alchemy, then sure, just use some cooking implements. It's really great. In fact, I'm pretty sure a frying pan is a halfling weapon, so we're already like halfway there. It's really, really good. Also, it states here that whenever you use the subsist downtime activity, you can use either crafting or cooking lore for the check rather than survival. In my honest opinion, you should always be able to use cooking lore. I think that just makes complete sense, and it's something that should just be a thing. Like whatever foods you do find, you're really good at making good use of them. And in addition to this, whenever you roll a failure, you actually get a success instead. So it's really easy for you to subsist. Honestly, with the sheer number of checks that are just automatically a success for subsisting or like automatic subsisting, I don't even know why Paizo just has subsisting as a role at this point. They want you to succeed this, obviously. It makes no sense in a game to actually prevent you from subsisting because it's like, oh, well, I guess your characters die of starvation or something. Like, I know that's not the failure effect for subsisting, but still, I, at this point, having a subsist roll at all just seems silly by a design standpoint, as well as just obviously Paizo doesn't want you to starve. So, regardless, it's pretty good as long as like you're in maybe you're in an environment where it's really hard to survive. Then at least you're better. So in a situation like I don't know, maybe the mana wastes or something, that bonus feature there I think is really handy. Now, in addition to all this cooking stuff, you also get quick alchemy benefits, though instead of your normal ability to create like various alchemical items, you can only create consumables, and those consumables must be alchemical food. Makes a lot of sense. Most of the alchemical food you can find in the Pathfinder treasure vault, and we'll look over some of it here in the full video. If you're watching the archetype dedication video anyway, the full video has more food that I'll look at a little bit later. In addition to this, when you get the alchemical crafting bonus feat, because that's what it gives you, you must choose alchemical food, but you can choose alchemical food of first or second level rather than first level. Makes a lot of sense. You get the Wandering Chef dedication at level 2. So if this is what you get, then you get just some additional, possibly level 2 foods. There's probably just not a lot. Now, the one part about this that doesn't make a lot of sense is you get versatile vials. Now, these versatile vials in the archetype dedication are supposed to be like parcels of food or something like that. But technically, versatile vials are also just straight up acid bombs. So, yeah, it's weird. They're trying really hard to make the cook art, like this cooking dedication, work with the alchemical benefits, and there's just some points it doesn't quite match up one for one. I don't see a problem with having extra, acidic bombs. Maybe you just have some extra spicy vinegar, for instance, or something on hand. But yeah, it's just one of those weird parts that just kind of crosses the wires a little bit. But yeah, so in the entire dedication, you get, and let me kind of rephrase it just so that anyone who's watching can fully understand what it gives you. You become trained in crafting or another skill of your choice if you already have crafting. When you subsist, you can use crafting or cooking lore. And on that subsist check, if you roll a failure, you get a success instead. You do get the quick alchemy benefits, though rather than being able to make any alchemical items, they must be consumables, and they must be consumable alchemical foods. And with the quick alchemy benefits, you get alchemical crafting, but you can only select alchemical foods with this, but they can be up to first and second level. And of course, with quick alchemy, you get 4 versatile vials. Most of this can only be used for food anyway, but the vials do count as bombs. So that's kind of the long and short of it. The Wandering Chef dedication is interesting at the very least. I mean, I'm all for any kind of alchemical based archetypes because they just give your characters a lot more options, and they tend to lead to much more interesting things. Now, moving on in the dedication itself, I'm going to say it's not a very exciting dedication because most of it just kind of is just basic alchemical crafting archetype stuff. So, for instance, morning side dishes, the only unique thing is beyond the fact that it gives you advanced alchemy benefits, which just lets you make items at the beginning of the day. You create 5 items rather than 4, which is what you normally can use or make with alchemical crafting. Though these items must be alchemical foods. So there you go. Morning side dishes is interesting, and it works with the archetype really, really well, but overall is not a very exciting feat. Additional servings is also similar. Now, you do need to be at least expert in crafting or cooking lore, but I do at least like the fact that cooking lore is one of the things you can use. And this just gives you extra versatile vials every day. And in addition, you can select this feat multiple times at 12th and 18th level to increase the number of versatile vials you can create. So you can just always have food on hand. That is more or less what it does. But otherwise, again, a pretty unremarkable feat. Now, at level 6, we get food preservation. Now, this one is very interesting because it breaks normal alchemist conventions. Essentially, what it does through either pickling, use of alcohol, or fermentation, you can use whatever item you make with advanced alchemy, you can preserve one of them to not expire during your next daily preparations. Now, if you ever create another fermented or preserved food, the old one expires. But this essentially means that as long as you get like a day ahead of time, you can technically have an additional food on top of your normal advanced alchemy, which is very interesting. Now, at higher levels of crafting or cooking lore, you can make more. At expert, you get 2, master, you get 3, and at legendary, you get 5. So you can have a bunch of extra items just sitting around waiting to be used at any time. I don't know if this is particularly powerful for alchemical foods, but it's definitely interesting. And like I said, it breaks the normal conventions when it comes to alchemical archetypes. So that being said, is pretty interesting. And the fact that you have food on hand that you can easily use, I think is really, really interesting and really cool. So preservation, I think, is a really good feat. Now, at level 10, we actually have an uncommon feat. Now, that you can see that there's a pretty big gap here in levels from because we had 2 level 6s, which means that if you don't have access to this level 10 feat, you really can't use only the wandering chef dedication if you're using the bonus archetype rule. And this one is kind of interesting. Now, the reason why it's this way is because this is actually a ritual. Yeah, so this feast planner gives you the fortifying brew ritual, though rather than drinks, you prepare lavish dishes instead. Now, you actually can take place of both the primary and secondary caster, though you do need to make the rolls for both positions. Rolls for both roles. Yeah, very interesting wording there. But you can use crafting or cooking lore instead of what they normally would require. So essentially, this is a one person ritual that you can use to help boost your team up with a food based ritual. It's pretty good. Honestly, uncommon is mostly just there for the sake of access for society play. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about for your games. It's not a very strong ritual by any means. So I think this one is particularly fine if your player wants to select this one. But I do have to state it is uncommon, so your GM can, for some reason or another, say no. Now, packed with flavor is a very good feat because more or less, as long as you're expert in either crafting or cooking lore, whenever you have an alchemical food or magic morsel, which magic morsels, if you're unfamiliar, are just like a type of item you can make that is a food item that has usually some effect either on you or on someone else. But whenever you use one of these abilities that grants an ability that allows for a saving throw, like maybe a hot food that gives a cone attack that's based on a reflex saving throw, rather than the item's DC, you can use your class DC or spell DC instead. This makes it really good, and honestly, I'm very sad to see it so high up in level here in this particular archetype dedication because should just be something you should get like pretty early on. Level 6, I would say at minimum. Now, in addition to this, though, this does have some really good benefits. When a creature consumes an alchemical food, magical morsel, or potions made by you, they also gain a +5 temporary hit points. And if you're mastering crafting, this becomes 10 temporary hit points, both of which last for an hour. So if you're an alchemist and you're making potions, then that's really, I guess it's potions. Well, I guess, yeah, potions, interesting, because that's not an elixir typically, though alchemist does have a feat that allows it to be an elixir. So potions is a very interesting choice here, but essentially if you're a cook and you are also crafting potions, like magic potions on top of everything, boom, extra temporary hit points, which is actually insanely good. So I understand why this is level 12. I just wish they kind of split this up and put changing the DC at like level 6. Maybe that's stepping on alchemist toes. I don't know, but it's mostly just for alchemical foods anyway, so I don't see it being that big of a deal. Regardless, packed with flavor is a really, really good feat. It's definitely a must take. At level 14, we get Cosmic Cocktail. You want to see infinity because we're going to see infinity from whatever we're putting in this drink. So once per day, you can spend a minute to create a special cocktail with colors that are reminiscent of the space and stars. Now, if immediately consumed after creation, you temporarily see everything all at once. You have Gojo's infinity essentially, but on yourself. It doesn't make you go crazy. It just gives you true sight for 10 minutes. An additional interesting part of it, though, is you use your crafting or cooking lore for counteract checks rather than whatever counteract you would normally have for using true sight, typically based on your spellcasting tradition. So, Cosmic Cocktail, you want to see everything, you want to see affinity, this is the drink for you. I find this super fun. I really like this, and as for a later game feat, I think this is absolutely perfect. And before we get to the final feat here, before I finish off, at least for this archetype video, I gotta ask, if you enjoy this content, please leave a like. I want pretty much any video that you guys are enjoying based on Pathfinder content, especially Tian Xia, to get likes, even if it's not from me. Because the more people talking about Tian Xia, the more people who are seeing content on Tian Xia on YouTube, the more people who are going to actually come and join us in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is currently my favorite TTRPG. It has been for the last 4 years or so. And I want more people to see this game. It's really, really good. So the more we help the algorithm kind of like these kind of videos, hopefully the more people will join us at our tables. And if you like my content specifically, then subscribe. You get to see all kinds of tabletop related content. I'm going to be covering the Cosmere RPG, other TTRPGs, but more especially, I get content from Paizo a little bit earlier than most people do. So you'll get to see some of the new stuff from the books as like a week or so in advance if you subscribe to this channel. So if you want to see some new stuff from Paizo a little bit early, or if you just like TTRPG stuff in general, I definitely recommend to subscribe. All right, let's talk about the final feat here for the Wandering Chef archetype dedication, which is the regional specialty. Now, this does require that you have morning side dishes. You're probably going to have this anyway if you are the Wandering Chef, so that shouldn't be a big deal. So essentially what this one does is you get to add an additional benefit to each of your dishes you create during your daily preparation. So it has to be the ones used with your advanced alchemy, not your quick alchemy benefits. Now, you pick an element per dish that you make, and each benefit does something a little differently. Typically, they remove one bad condition on yourself or on whoever eats it, and gives an item bonus to any saves against a particular effect. For instance, wood removes one source of persistent bleed, which is really, really good. And for 1 hour, that target gains a +3 item bonus to saves against diseases and poisons. So, a really good effect. All of them are pretty solid. I'm not going to go over each and every one, but having a couple on hand, especially like water and wood that gets rid of persistent bleed or reduces the frightened condition, I think are incredibly solid choices to have with your cooking. And plus, a lot of these give some additional benefits if you know you're going up against certain creatures that use certain types of effects. But yeah, that's going to be it for the Wandering Chef. The Wandering Chef is such an interesting archetype, and it's something that I find was much needed in Pathfinder, because food is one of those things that like anyone can really relate to. Everyone needs to eat, or at least we as people outside the game need to eat, so we can relate to that. Maybe your characters don't need to eat, or maybe your characters eat some very weird things, but like at least out of the game, we can all relate to having a chef like in the party. Someone, if you have a friend who makes good food, then you should be able to appreciate the Wandering Chef. So that's going to be it for this video as far as the Wandering Chef is concerned. So if you guys want to see more on the cooking stuff, like I said, there'll be a link down in the description that goes to the full cooking video. But this is it for the archetype dedication itself. I just want to make sure that it's in that playlist so that everyone who's looking for archetypes can find it. But we're going to be continuing on with some of the cooking stuff. So for you archetype video watchers, bye for now. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and continue on with the video.